So this is a very exciting one. I'm sure, like myself, many of you grew up with awesome haunt attractions in your local area. I grew up in Indianapolis. We had a place called Nightmare on Edgewood, which was amazing. And I'm just so excited for this film, this whole project, and of course, the multiple ways it ties into the Iceland Kills lore and mythology. This is the team behind Spooktacular. Come on up, friends.
I'm taller for that 2 seats.
So welcome. I think the first thing we should do is I'm going to start at the very end and have each of you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Quinn Monahan. I'm the director of Spooktacular. It's a 4-year project. We started in 2019, and showing my age already. To my right is.
I'm Spooky Dave. I'm David Bertolino. I grew up in the tenements of Brighton, raised in Watertown, exiled to Sudbury, Massachusetts, and found a little dilapidated farm which was titled Spooky World. You remember it, right? Say hello to Anthony Landry.
Hello, everyone. Anthony Landry, one of the producers of the film, lifetime Spooky World fan. David changed my life when I first stepped on that midway back in the 90s. And I also host the podcast Spooky 101 for the movie. So thank you all for coming today.
Linda Bertolino. I was also known as the Queen of Halloween. But anyway, David and I had quite an exciting journey from the very beginning of the concept to this actual film itself and documentary. And we're thrilled to have the support and love of all of you because it wouldn't be possible without you. Thank you.
I know we have people from all over here this weekend. How many of you are from Massachusetts? So for those of us who remember, don't remember, are familiar, not familiar, tell us a little bit about the origins of the haunt and how it got started, and take us a little bit through that trajectory.
Sure. Linda and I were looking for a place to go on a hayride. And so we checked the local listings, and Drumlin Animal Farm was advertised. We called to make a reservation. They were booked every day. I mean, the whole month was booked up. So I thought, wow, hayrides, New England, that's something. But coincidentally, the next day, a friend of mine who inherited the Warwick Mall called me up and said, hey, there's a hayride in New Jersey. And this guy has little stage sets along the trail. He's charging $10 a piece. He's got hundreds of people coming there every night. The next day we flew to Philly. We checked out the Renault Winery. It was called Haunted Hayrides. And they used Vincent Price's likeness in the logo. So that was my first attachment to Vincent Price, although I was totally hooked on the Wax Museum movie that he did, House of Wax. But there you go.
Give it up for Vincent Price.
How many of you with the remake starring Paris Hilton?
Paris Hilton came to one of my events, but that's another story.
David, you should mention that this was in 1990 when you started.
Yeah, that's right. This is a long time ago. A lot of you weren't around back then, but in 1990, I was inspired seeing this hayride, and I'm going to just give you the elevator pitch to it. I was so blown away at what was possible that to accelerate the story, I started looking for a farm to rent, and I found it in Berlin, Massachusetts. Anyone from Berlin here at all? No, not really? No, that's okay. You know, back then there was 1,800 residents of Berlin, but when we opened, and every night, there was over 2,000 people in our front lawn, as Linda would affectionately say, that would buy a ticket to come on our hayride. So it was just an incredible success from day one. And I have to make an admission now that I'm an old man, that if it wasn't for the efforts of the group ensembles such as Linda and Bill Tataglia and a number of others, there's Craig Seaman from Worcester Magazine and Worcester T&G, who broke the story and told all of the readers in our local community about spooky hayrides, which later turned to Spooky World. But, you know, again, I'm the least creative person in this room, but I happen to listen to all of these other people, and that's what our success is based on. And a shout out to somebody who is not here. We thought he was going to be here, but his influence was phenomenal, and that's Tom Savini. Tom Savini literally created Spooky World, and his legacy lives on.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about, if both of you could speak to Tom's involvement and how that came about.
Sure. You know, Tommy came as a celebrity signing autographs in year one. I hired Kane Hodder, Gunnar Hansen, and Tom. And none of them had done signings before. And, you know, Kane was a bit apprehensive because he said, you know, is anyone going to want my autograph? But we promoted the hell out of it on, you know, 250,000 flyers because we couldn't afford much other media. And, you know, people like Craig promoted their appearances, and they did huge. I mean, we, you know, created this industry of, you know, sessions of autographs for horror celebrities and gave them a home for all those years. And it's been running 30 years since then. I mean, this is the 31st year of Spooky World. They now operate in New Hampshire, and I, you know, sold to them many years ago, but you know, that was the birthplace, they say, of the haunted industry. In fact, when I first went to my first Halloween convention, a number of haunters came to me in the early, I think it was 91, and we had a meeting in my hotel room, what I thought was going to be a half a dozen haunters, and the room was filled with 30 or 40 people on the floor from all parts of the country, and we were sharing ideas. And by the way, that was the birthplace, that first meeting, from the Haunted House Association, which I started back in 91. So it goes that far back.
And speaking of birthplace, Spooky World was the birthplace of our wonderful son, Sam.
There he is.
He's here with his lovely wife, Michelle, and our granddaughter, Carmen. And it was pretty amazing. I was 8 months pregnant, and David recommended that let's have the baby in the barn. We can make the Associated Press. He was always thinking.
So kind of the P.T. Barnum in me. I know, I realize that. You know, it's funny because Sam would go year after year with Uncle Tommy through the haunted houses that he was creating every year. He added on a new house. And Sam would look up and say, yeah, Uncle Tommy, that corpse needs a little more blood. So, I mean, that's the kind of environment Sam grew up in back then.
And turned out just fine.
It worked out well.
And David was being interviewed by, I think it was the Worcester Telegraph and Gazette, and someone, and I think it was you, I'm not sure, but Sam was in his little mini play and hack and play, and he was getting a little antsy, so David affectionately brought a turret teddy to give him to play with.
We actually needed a. Is there anyone here from the IRS, by the way? Before I say what I'm about to say.
I just walked in.
Oh, sorry, I'll tell the story later. No. Sam would, you know, as a baby, you know, just born at Spooky World, I taped his voice. And we had what's called Baby on a Stick. Do you remember that? Okay. There was a little nursery in the Tom Savini haunted house. And when you walked by, this baby came crashing against the plexiglass. And you lose, your mind over it. So I took the soundtrack and I signed the contract on behalf of my
Of
son.
Sam crying. Yeah,
Of Sam crying. So I put that in the digital repeater. And at the time, I think an IRA, the maximum was $2,000 a year. So I wrote a check from Spooky World to my son Sam for $2,000. And I called it a licensing fee. But I told my accountant about it, and he said, that would work. He says, you're representing him. So we put this $2,000 a month in an account, an active retirement account, and Sam was paid $2,000 every year, into his retirement account. So he had a nice college fund when he graduated to go to school and further his education. So he's crying on. I hope that passes the litmus test for a tax credit. I don't know if anyone's ever.
Well, I know you meant to say IRS and you said IRA, but I think the IRA also funded things with similar tax rates.
That's the secret.
I'd love for you to tell me some about the experience, as someone who didn't grow up getting to go to Spooky World. I have, Nightmare in Edgewood was my haunt of choice in Indianapolis, on a street called Edgewood. Tell me about the fan experience of growing up around it and going to it. What was your first exposure?
Well, back in the 90s, and I know a lot of you weren't around for that, but I think that this film is actually going to bring you back there in a very effective way, kind of like Stranger Things did for the 80s.
I grew up in Indiana in the 80s, by the way, so Stranger Things was like,
Hitting home.
we didn't have those lights on our BMXs.
You did have the walkie-talkies, though.
We didn't have exact Ghostbuster stuff. I love Stranger Things.
Seamstress was good at the time. But back in the 90s, no cell phones, non-existent, wasn't even on the radar yet. I mean, at least smartphone-wise. You had to find a payphone to call someone. So imagine an immersive experience where you can't contact anyone easily if you're afraid. And you're driving to this middle of nowhere place. There's no Google Maps, there's no MapQuest, nowhere. You have to rely on a Rand McNally atlas to find where in the hell Berlin, Mass is. Because I grew up right outside of Boston, and I'm like, we have a Berlin in Massachusetts? Like, that's pretty cool. But anyways, I begged and pleaded with my uncle to take us out there because I was on my school bus and I had my Walkman on, which had a cassette player, which was a form of audio back in the day. And I was on the school bus and I was listening to the Greg Hill Show on WAAF, and then bingo, and I heard this jingle in
It's America's horror theme park.
Spooky World, and I'm like, wow, that's corny as hell. And then all of a sudden they said, come to Spooky World, meet Elvira, meet Kane Hodder, meet Linda Blair, and now you have to remember, things like this were not commonplace back in the day. You could not meet your celebrities unless you read Fangoria all the time, went to the conventions that Tony Timpone put on, and places like that. And a lot of the times those were in New York City. So for young teens relying on families for a ride, unless you're hitchhiking, you're not gonna get there and meet your celebrity. So what David did was, it was like this spaceship landed in the middle of this cornfield outside of the 495 belt. He picked the perfect spot because the Assabet River was right there. And it's still warm from the summer, but once it gets cold at night, they literally had nature-made fog when you came off the highway. So we're coming off the highway. First of all, it took 90 minutes to get off of the highway. All you saw was red lights coming from 495 going onto the 290 belt to the off-ramp. And when you got off the off-ramp, through the fog, you saw this giant illuminated pumpkin on top of the barn. And I remember being 14 and going, all right, this tracks, this is cool. So ended up parking in the field across the street, making the walk over, and every year from the age of 14 on, I just saw the place not only grow, but grow in a smart way where it didn't take away from the original integrity of what the park was. It knew its identity, it knew where it stood, and the great part was all the tricks of the trade that David and Linda put together, they shared through that haunted house association with other folks, because they weren't on the internet sharing info. They had to go to conventions in Chicago to do this, and that's where if you go to any haunted attraction, you will see the influence of what Spooky World did, and you're going to be able to see that in this film.
Yeah, you can't overstate the fact that Spooky World was the first haunt in the country. There was no other dedicated haunted theme park like Spooky World. They set the template for what would come, which is now a multi-billion-dollar haunting industry. There wouldn't probably be conventions like this were it not for that haunting industry supporting that. And some of you have probably been to some of those very specific haunter type conventions, and you know what that world is. And also, I think it's important to say that David and Linda came from the Halloween costume business. That's what they were doing. And David started to realize, there's a void out there. I think I can fill that void, because the people who are doing these little hayrides are not doing it well. So he and Linda, they just went for it. They did it. They were a couple. They didn't have a child yet, and they just put everything on the line. David borrowed $150,000 to build this place up and make it what he thought it should be. He was able to pay that $150,000 back in 2 weeks. It was a 10-year loan. He paid it back in
Sharp Tank. I ran into a friend of mine who I did some work for, and he went bankrupt. And so I felt so bad for him. I said, listen, don't feel bad. You don't have to pay me back. 4 years later, I run into him on the street, literally. And he said, what are you up to? And I said, I'm working on this thing called Spooky Hayrides. I'm going to do this hayride. If I can just get 40 people a night to break even, I'm going to be good, and I'll be able to pay my bills. He said, well, come back to the office. I went back to the office, and he's closing the office because he sold his company to Bain Capital that week for $9 million. And so he asked me, what did I need for capital? And I said, I'm trying to raise $150,000. I've already got my retirement money in. I'm second mortgaging our house. He went in the office, came out with a check for $150 grand, and he said, okay, pay me back within 10 or 15 years. And if you need to extend it, I'll own a piece of it then. If you can pay me back within a year, which is not likely, I'm not a partner, just pay me the interest. Well, I paid him in 2.5 weeks. And he's not a partner, but he wished me well. But it was just a phenomenal, weird experience. And this came from somebody who was, barely graduated high school, 14 years old, working in my dad's joke shop in downtown Boston called Little Jack Horner. That was me with the hand buzzers. And we had a Halloween section that blew up and was very popular. And then our vendor, Ruby's Costume, made me their national sales manager. And that's when I started thinking Halloween entertainment. And the rest is history. It's just phenomenal. And now we've got this feature documentary that has been accepted at 4 big film festivals. And we are up for Best Documentary in Europe, Best Documentary in the US, which is recognized for the Oscars. So we're crossing our fingers. And we're hitting the ground running. We open up in Hollywood on the 28th, Austin, Texas on the 23rd. And our celebrities will be there, including Kane Hodder. Spencer's joining us.
Yeah, Spencer will be with us in California.
And Linda Blair. So if you're in California on the 28th, come and watch the movie and get to see all the celebrities that are in the movie. It's really nice.
So tell me a little bit about Spooktacular, the movie, the concept for doing a documentary about this amazing story, and some of the challenges with independent filmmaking.
I can speak
That
to
would
that.
be Quinn.
Yeah, pulling that all together.
So David and I knew each other for about 10 years before we started working on the project. He used to tell me stories. We were neighbors, and he told me stories about Spooky World, which I'd never heard of. I'm from LA. And quite frankly, I was not a horror fan, but I am now. When he began to tell me about this, and we haven't talked about the hundreds of people that eventually worked at Spooky World as haunters and as character actors. And that's the part that got me interested, because I grew up in this community theater, very similar. We put on a big show every summer. Well, every Halloween, every October, they would put on a big show with a cast of hundreds. And I know what that is. I know what the camaraderie between actors when you're out there and you're working on this thing every so. That got me very interested. And the more I started to look at videos on YouTube and learn about Spooky World, which, by the way, if you want to know about Spooky World, look on YouTube. There's a lot of people who go out to the old location and film, and they talk about, they remember going there as a kid. Anyway, so we just drove to Las Vegas one weekend, and I put a microphone on him and I recorded the whole story. It took about 5 hours. We talked about it, and I kept asking him questions, and I said, we have a movie here. And he said, yeah, we have a movie here, let's do it. So that was the beginning. We flew back here, we interviewed some original cast members who were very happy to talk to us. To a person, they said, it was the best time of my life. To a person. We have that montage at the end of our film. We'll show you that. But that's the story. The real story of Spooky World was this large group of people just coming together to do something because it was fun. Many of them said, I didn't even know I was going to be paid. And they were paid. They were well paid by David. David paid everybody. But they all had a fabulous time. Such a fabulous time that there are people out there in the world to this day who would not be born were it not for Spooky World and the cold nights out on the hayride trail.
We cover that, but not too much.
Usually they say show, don't tell. That's more of a tell, don't show.
Quinn was already pre-production, thinking it all out, what he was going to do, who he was going to interview, and I was just mildly on board. And I'm thinking, who's going to want to see this?
Yeah, he didn't realize it.
I didn't realize it until I'm watching Seth Meyers one night with my wife Cindy, and he's a featured guest, and Seth asked him, okay, fellow New Englander, do you have any, John Krasinski, do you have any, famous, or any great memories? And he said, yep, growing up in Newton, Massachusetts, and coming every weekend to Spooky World in Berlin. And it's like, you gotta be kidding me, I can't believe what I just watched. They go into second segment, and he starts talking about stories at Spooky World involving some of our actors. By the way, speaking of that, is Meg Smith here? Meg is the feature reporter for Worcester Magazine and Worcester TMG. But in addition, are you ready for this? She started her career at Spooky World. How about that?
I was at the Witches Station. And I'm really proud to contribute to a whole generation of really sugared up kids that we would give the treats to. And I have many hilarious stories, if you indulge me just one. One of the, I'm Irish, I come from a whole line of hilarious storytellers. I'll try to stay on topic to honor my ancestors. We invented Halloween, by the way, the Irish. You're all welcome. So anyway, one of the other witches at that time, thank you so much. Now I've got the mic. Y'all don't know when she started. So, but I want to be good, in all seriousness, I want to be good to the time of the panelists. So I'll just tell you that one of the other witches at that time was dating the actor who had the really actually very harmless chainsaw. And at the end of the hayrides, just when everybody had thought that they've seen as many frightening little vignettes as they were going to see, and they were all getting off the hayride and then thinking, oh, goodness, all right, we're good. We made it through all of those terrifying living nightmare skits. And while they're just sort of congratulating themselves on feeling relieved, out would come the young man with the chainsaw, and with great relish would rip it, and some people would run away screaming, some people would laugh. but it was always a big hit. Well, at one time, I have to tell you that when you're in a group of female witches dressed up in costumes, needless to say, you sometimes get a lot of attention, some of it great, not so much, some of it. Well, one of the patrons came up to me and he said, "Hey, do you know that witch over there?" And he's pointing to the young woman that I mentioned. I said, "Well, yeah, we all work together. Can I help you with something?" And he said, "Does she have a boyfriend?" And I said, "Yeah, you see that guy with the chainsaw? That's the boyfriend." So, in all seriousness, it was really a great experience. I have a lot of entertainment background. I worked at the Renaissance Fair before. I also work as an Oriental dancer, and for a long time I was the belly girl. And I have to say, I learned, in all seriousness, I learned so many great things just from that experience at Spooky World. And this is the truth. I have no reason not to tell you otherwise. You learned a lot about interacting with people. You learned a lot about how you could very easily take a child from being a scared child to a happy, laughing child, just by spending a little bit of extra time with them. There were tremendously talented people there, many of whom you'll see in the film, I'm sure, when you see it. And you really learned a lot about what it means to act and we talk about the scary factor, and of course it's Halloween, but what you're really doing is you're immersing people in this alternate reality, this parallel universe, where they actually feel at home, because that's what they came for. And it's been quite a few years, as was mentioned, it's the pre-cell phone time. But I will always take that experience with me. I give many presentations. I MC a lot of shows. I love costumes. I love just going up to complete strangers as a journalist and talking to them about their life. And it really is the truth that a little bit of Spooky World always stays with me in all those experiences. So I'm very proud to have on my resume that yes, I was a witch at Spooky World. I lived to tell about it.
You know what? Since you have that microphone,
Yes, sir.
we have time for a couple of questions. If you'd be kind enough to take that microphone to whoever we call upon.
Well,
Okay, sure. I don't want to take away from the panelists.
Actually, if you can put that microphone in front of that gentleman, Craig, right there, who is the feature writer at the Worcester T&G that made Spooky World explode in the media. I'd like to...
You're
Craig, tell us about
stealing my
Spooky
thunder,
World.
because I was about to note my colleague who's in the house. Craig Seaman, y'all.
This guy right here, we should kiss his ass every morning because he has given us so much joy and so much horror over the years. This guy is a true visionary. I wasn't prepared to say anything. It's weird, I walked in, I saw myself on the rail, so wearing the same jacket, but different tie though. For anybody who went to Spooky World, everybody has a fond memory of Spooky World. It was the greatest place on earth.
What's your memories?
As I said when I was interviewed for this thing, I actually burst into tears. And I hope I don't do it today, because I think it was the first year. I am gonna burst into tears. I went with my dad and my brother. And my dad got the biggest kick out of meeting Elvira.
Elvira, yes.
And Elvira, and like we've said already on here, there was absolutely nothing like this ever before this. And not only that, he was the smartest guy to think of this, because no one in their wildest dreams would have ever thought of anything like Spooky World existed. So not only was he the first to do it, he was the first to have the idea and actually put his house on haunt. And I mean, it could have been, I mean, you look at it now and it's like it's a no-brainer, You know,
It looked easy.
Yeah,
But it wasn't.
but-
It's Linda and I cleaning 20 portalette toilets for the first week, which later turned out to be 40 portalette toilets by the second week. I mean, it was nuts.
Also, we were cleaning the house, which was from the 1700s, and I felt that I was cleaning one of the fireplaces, and I felt a tap on my shoulder, and I said, "Oh, David," and he said, "What?" from another room. I'm like, "Ooh."
I think it was our investment banker thinking that he lost all of his money.
I mean, I'll be wrapping this up because I want people to ask questions if they have this, because it's not about me, it's about these wonderful people and the memories. But I would compare him, and this is probably might be a little out there for a few people, but this is the George Lucas of horror, in the sense that he came up with this. And I remember the great story of when George Lucas showed his friends a rough cut, his director's friends a rough cut of the thing, and I think it was Brian De Palma said, "Well, you're never gonna be working again." So, but God bless you, and thank you for all the haunts.
Thank you for the press.
Who's got questions? Pass the
And so
microphone.
this hand went up first.
Okay.
Okay, well, he's got the mic, so.
Yeah, had Spooky World not closed its doors, were there any like new plans or innovations you were going to do for the park?
You know, my partner passed away, who was a founding partner, unexpectedly, and at the same time, we were at Gillette Stadium, and management needed some space, so they took away our hayride. And so when that
Wait a minute, don't, wait, you're giving away the end of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we can't talk about
Yeah,
that.
I'm
But
sorry.
to the spirit of your question, there was constant innovation going on at Spooky World. That was one of the things that David insisted upon. Every year, he used to say, well, you know, the worst thing somebody could say is, I've been to Spooky World, I'm not going this year because I saw it last year.
Yeah.
No, he had to have new attractions every year.
Reinvented.
He hired the best people, he found them wherever they were in the country, he brought them to Spooky World to start designing and start building. And that was his genius. He knew as a promoter, and we all call him the P.T. Barnum of Halloween. That's who he really is. He is a promoter through and through, and he knows what people want. That's the thing. He knew that there was a market for this. And I think the last 30 years have borne that out. Did you have a question? Why don't we pass the microphone to this person?
Hey, actually, sorry, we gotta give it to her. 'Cause-
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know who it
No,
was.
you've been
Yes,
denied
go
twice in a
ahead.
row.
I'm just very excited.
Speak up, please.
Hi. I guess my question is, you said that the first year you had Kane Hodder and you wasn't even sure if anyone would want his autograph. At what point did you realize, like, oh, we actually changed the fabric of how Halloween operates in the United States?
You know, I never really felt complacent and thought I was at the place I needed to be and just looked back at it. And, like Quinn said, we did keep reinventing ourselves. But by, the third or fourth day of seeing all of those cars emerge from the highways and the state police directing traffic called out in an emergency situation,
Nowhere to park.
there was nowhere to park. We just kept renting parking lots around us, which were fields. And
They turned the nearby farms into parking lots. It was insane.
And
More
we-
people came to visit than were actually living in the town of Berlin. I mean, twice as many. So.
I mean, when the celebrities would, I would call, the first handful of celebrities in year one, and there was no market for them. So they were okay coming out. By year two, the word was out. You could make several $1,000s a day signing autographs at Spooky World. We better go there. So then I started hearing they called me, Robert Englund called us, various other, Alice Cooper called us.
It was a Halloween
So
gold rush.
everybody wanted to be where Halloween was happening,
Yep.
and we were the place that it was happening at. And here's this little town close to all of you folks, and this is where it was discovered. We just did an event called Midsummer Scream in LA, and I couldn't believe the amount of people who had Spooky World Berlin memorabilia, t-shirts, hats, sweaters, and we were autographing them. And this is the stuff that's selling for huge money on eBay, by the way. If you have a Tiny Tim, I got married on The Tonight Show with Tiny Tim in Berlin. If you have one of those shirts, it's worth $300 or $400. And it's selling for big money now. It's just phenomenal that people are paying a premium for all of this original Spooky World memorabilia. One of the things that helped was we did this little cassette tape, A Visit to Spooky World in 1995. And I was going to order like 600 or 800 of them for our gift shop. And I showed it to Spencer Gifts, and they bought 24,000 of them. And so they put them in every Spencer gift store in America. And you know, now the whole country knows about Spooky World in 1995. It was crazy. So that was one of the milestone items.
Speaking of 1995, I think it's worth mentioning that Spooky World opened in 91. By 1994, 95, 96, there was a gold rush in the country. Everybody by that time had heard about it. The very first month of Spooky World's operation, the Wall Street Journal came to interview this guy who was making bank on Halloween. And so the word was out. So by 1994, 95, all over the country, everybody was building their haunts, their hay rides. And that was the birth of the haunting industry. And it was all because they heard about this guy.
And they wanted to be there. Willard Scott would do the weather live from Spooky World on the Today Show, the morning show. Ron DeShear did Up All Night live on a Friday night. Various weather forecasts would shoot live footage. The guy's name was Mike Wonkum. I don't know if he's still around anymore, but he would shoot every Friday night his live, weather report live from Spooky World. I used to buy rain insurance, and again, I hope there's no investigative journalists, but I would call Bruce Schweigler from who was the weather forecaster for NBC, because I'd buy a lot of airtime on NBC. And I'd say, you gotta tell me when it's gonna rain and where. I have to pick Worcester Airport or I have to pick Boston Airport. And he would tell me the weather patterns, and son of a gun, he got it right most of the time. So it was legal gambling that we, got payoff from Schweigler's advice on when to buy rain insurance. But the media was so involved in Spooky World, and they were wonderful to us. We were a great Halloween story, and
They loved Spooky World, and Spooky World loved them.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, we have to wrap up the panel, but I want to ask, to conclude, those of us who can't make it to one of the theatrical screenings of the film, can you talk a little bit about the eventual plans for?
Well, we have, our list of people that have made offers to buy the film, and they're notable. They're, the A-list of the streamers. But in addition, we're also looking for full theatrical release, and, we're lawyering up, and we don't know where it's going, but right now we are in Fantastic Fest on the 23rd, Beyond Fest on the 28th, which is in Hollywood. And if you're lucky enough to be in Hollywood on the 28th of September, most of the mega cast of this movie will be there in a panel discussion after our screening, which is great.
And if you're going to be in Barcelona in October, we'll be there.
Yeah, we're actually nominated for Best Documentary, which is, they tell me, Oscar qualified. So if we make this top prize in one or two of these festivals, we could be at the Oscars, and we'll see you in February on TV.
Well, one of the cool things about this film, and I'll wrap this up for you guys, is the fact that during the process, we were worried at first about how much footage we had from the 90s because everything was on VHS tape. But as we started conducting our interviews, people came from out of the woodwork, and now we have a treasure trove of footage. So what you're going to be seeing at the film festivals is a 96-minute, well-oiled machine that's easily consumable for film festival audiences. But the thing is, this film is pliable. We could make a docu-series out of it. There is sequel potentials. It is just look at the footage we have.
There's always a sequel.
God, and I mean, Spencer reached out to us last year. I think it's important. I mean, we are at Silver Screen Con, right? Like, is anybody familiar with Spencer Charnas? Right? Well, Spencer reached out to us last year and said, whatever I can do to help. We were lucky to get an interview with him right under the wire, and he is full force with us because he was me, he was you, And his whole horror trajectory, he testifies to in this movie,
Yeah.
that he tried 3 times to get on the Midway there at Berlin's location. Strike 1, he showed up at 5. He was scared. His dad drove him home. He tried again the next year.
Sounds like
Strike
you.
2.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Strike 2, and I was older, and that just goes to show how scared I was. Strike 2, his dad took him home the second year. 3rd year in a row, his dad says, all right, this is the last try. Spencer went in, and he said his whole trajectory changed from there. So we are honored to have Spencer trying us.
Well, yeah,
He's a
something
producer
clicked.
now.
Something clicked for Spencer, and that he tells us that launched his entire career in a way, that he fell in love with horror at Spooky World and never looked back. But I want to take this opportunity to thank our producer, Tony Landry, who we came initially to interview just as a fan, who is now the most valuable player on our team. He pulled all of this together for us to be here today, so thank you. Thanks, Tony.
The movie is Spooktacular,
Yes, it is. Thank you very much.
and thank you so much, and thank you everybody for.
I just want to let you know that we will all be at the vendor area, and we just mentioned my name, and we'll give you a free poster, and we'll
Ryan, say
autograph
hello,
for you.
Ryan.
You're going to sell it on eBay for thousands of dollars.
And if you want to get it for pennies, I'll autograph it too. Thank you.